A very cheerful good morning to one and all present here. I, Hani Khurana, student of second semester BJMC, Delhi Metropolitan Education, welcome you all to the second edition of World's first 10-day digital live international conference, ICAN. It's been organized by Delhi Metropolitan Education in collaboration with School of Communication and Creative Arts, Deakin University, Melbourne, Australia. We are privileged that ICAN4 is supported by Indian Council of Social Science Research. Let me tell you all about the previous year's ICAN, which made an all-round success. In ICAN 1, the topic was India and changing aspects of news. It was in March 2018. ICAN 2, which was held in November 2018, and the theme was Indian cinema and alternate net.
ICAN3 was held in June 2020 and the theme was Issues of Community, Agenda and News. The hashtag of the session was Conference for Change. The theme for this year's conference is Information, Communication and Artificial Networks. And the hashtag for the
knowledge
partners
partners
is Communication Redefined. ICAN4 has 4 knowledge partners: K.R. Mangalam University, Gurugram, Haryana; Adamas University, Kolkata; Makhanlal Chaturvedi National University of Journalism and Mass Communication, Bhopal; Vigyan Prasar, Government of India. ICAN4 has also partnered with the Department of Communication and Journalism, Guwahati University as the academic partner. Our international partner is Institute for International Journalism, E.W. Scripps School of Journalism, Ohio University, USA, and our media partner is the Policy Times. ICAN is a flagship conference of DME Media School and today has made an international name for itself. ICAN4 has witnessed the participation of about 60 eminent academicians and researchers from 5 continents and 11 countries, namely India, South Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, Bangladesh, USA, Mexico, France, Italy, Australia, and Ghana. More than 100 media educators and researchers have gathered to present their papers in the conference. We have a total of 36 live sessions, including 9 technical sessions, 3 workshops, 7 panel discussions, 3 special sessions, and 10 masterclasses scheduled. One of the most unique things about ICAN4 is that all the 9 technical sessions are being chaired and co-chaired by a galaxy of intellectual women representing different states of the country. It's a matter of pride for us to be a part of DME, who haven't stopped in these tough times, and we are here with another knowledgeable series of sessions of ICAN. At DME Media School, we have a student-centric body called Spark, with students of positive attitude and resonating communication, and I extend a heartfelt gratitude towards them. Journalism at DME is the official newsletter of DME Media School. This fortnightly publication covers all the major activities happening in and out the campus. It is a student-centric newsletter carried out entirely by them under the supervision of faculty members. DME TV is the official YouTube channel of DME, where you can find the playlist related to all our sessions, lecture series, film festival, and this conference, and all the previous ones and the forthcoming ones. It gives me great pleasure to inform everyone that we are live on our official Facebook page, Stream Now. For any more information, follow us on our social media handles. Links are being shared in the chat box. Now, I would like to request Professor Dr. Ramjeesh Saxena, Dean DME Media School, Director DME Studios and Productions, Director International Relations, Delhi Metropolitan Education, Noida, and the convener of ICAN4 to please say a few words.
Thank you, Shreya. So this is the third day and this is the second technical session in which we are meeting. I'm grateful to Dr. Anita Parihar who accepted our request to chair this session. And this session is on cinema because our theme is information, communication and artificial networks. But then since cinema is the primary interest, I believe, of each one of us, so a number of papers were contributed on cinema. And obviously, cinema is a mass media which is most influential, and the communication is most impactful in the case of cinema. So how this whole communication is happening through cinema in contemporary times, and how the cinema has contributed, has affected the process of the social transformation. All that is going to be discussed in this session, and I'm happy the kind of participation which is happening in technical sessions, if I can say particularly, because more than 100 authors, such as scholars, they submitted their abstracts and papers who all are slated for their presentation in different technical sessions. And otherwise also the master classes, the panel discussions, experts are joining from all over the world, and the sessions have been very fruitful till this time, and students are also participating in large number, which show that whatever is happening, that's of keen interest, that's of importance to everybody, whosoever is there, in whichever capacity somebody is there in any of the sessions that we are organizing. So I stop here, and I wish that this technical session will also prove very fruitful for each one of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insightful words. Right now, we are having technical session number 2 revolving around communication through cinema and social transformation with our guest, Dr. Anita Parihar. I extend a very heartful welcome to her. Now, I would like to introduce you all to the co-chair of the session, Ms. Manmeet Kaur, Assistant Professor, DME Media School. And now I'd request her to please carry on the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Shreya. We have with us today Dr. Anita Parihar as the chair of Technical Session 2 for ICAN4. Dr. Parihar is Masters in Women's Study from Research Center of Women's Study of Shrimati Nathibai Damodar Thakrae's University. Ma'am has done VR, DETV, TVP online virtual reality from University of London with distinction. Adding to her expertise, she has done direction in educational television from the City of Bath College. She has contributed in research and scripted, directed 6 programs in UK as British Council Scholar. Dr. Parihar has mentored above 300 students from script to screen for video productions. Ma'am has also contributed script writing workshops in several universities. Not only that, she has also presented research papers in various national and international conferences. She is also the member of Asian Media Information Center, AMIC Philippines, since 2012. Her core teaching areas include research, script writing, production, direction for television, film, and new media, deconstructing films, television programs, narratives of different genres, case studies of documentary and fiction filmmakers, persuasive camera techniques, sound design and editing, interviewing techniques for broadcast TV and radio, educational documentary production, introduction to virtual reality, and gender studies. Having vast experience of 30 years in video production, ma'am has also trained various eminent film personalities and personalities from Indian cinema like Deepti Naval, Mahesh Bhatt, Javed Akhtar, Vinod Khanna, and to name a few. We welcome you, ma'am, to chair the technical session on communication through cinema and social transformations. We will be presenting the Best Paper Awards, and the name will be declared in a day or two in the coming days of ICAN4. So I request everyone to please stay tuned with us. Before presiding over the presentations of the technical session 2, I would like to share that ma'am will be sharing her views and observations for the presentations as well as on the theme after all the presentations of this technical session 2. Before inviting our first presenter, I would also like to share the guidelines for the presenter that each and every presenter will be given 5 to 8 minutes for the presentation, including the question answer round. We invite questions in the chat box, so I request everyone to please post their questions in the chat box. Also, I would also like to share that the best paper in the technical session 1 is by Ms. Kirti Lumba, and the title of her paper is E-Governance in Socio-Political Context, a study based on Seva Kendras of Punjab. Congratulations, Ms. Kirti. So now, further ado, I would like to call the first presenter of this technical session to Miss Novina Chakravarti from Adamas University, Kolkata, and the title of her paper is Indian New Wave Cinema in Today's Perspective, a Comparative Analysis of Storylines.
Firstly, a very good morning to each and everyone, respected all the respected conveners, chairperson, to everyone. Well, I'm so thankful to DME ICAN that they have been giving a chance to film people, those who are doing their study and education in films. I'm so glad. Well, I'm Novina Chakravarti, currently working as assistant professor in Department of Communication and Management, School of Media and Communication, Adamas University. So here my going to topic is the Indian New Wave Cinema in Today's Perspective and a comparative analysis of storylines. Fine. So now the basic abstract and the meaning of this paper is basically this research it deals with the orientation of French New Wave cinema, French New Wave movement, and New Wave movement, how it originated in India. Fine. And this is a study, it was a comparative analysis with a little bit of discourse understanding, a storyline, and how it is still so fresh and relevant in the present context and the theme and thematic understanding. So now the introduction of New Wave cinema. Now, according to the dictionary, if you'll find that New Wave cinema is defined as a cinematic movement that is characterized and improvisation, abstraction, and subject symbolization of experimental photographic techniques. Fine, and the new wave cinema are actually meant to challenge the popularity of pre-existing, which is, we call it like a commercial cinema. Earlier, there was always a concept. Now, many authors, they say there is only a good film or a bad film, but in initial and inception of that, it was always a commercial film, which was basically with the mainstream audience and mainstream cinema. Then it was basically an art, and in between catering both the cinema, there was an immediate understanding of parallel cinema, which is a parallel understanding of a generality. So the pre-existing tradition and the superiority of the commercial cinema, it is different and full of realistic content and location. Now, in the literature of review, I catered here the 1950s and 60s, how French New Wave film movement and one of the influential movement in cinema history. It is also known as novel war. It gave to new kind of cinema that highly self-aware and revolutionary. And the renowned filmmaker like Truffaut, Charles Godard, and Francis Truffaut, you may heard of the 400 blows, then Julie Jim, the soft skin, and Charles Godard like Breathless, the little soldier, then the Cameron, My Little to Leave, and Renault's The Last Year Mermaid, and Aegis Varda's women issues. There are many important things that came into this existence in 1950s to 40s, and it was a stop gap to the Hollywood and the French commercial cinema, and they came up with a new understanding of realistic, and it was somehow the effect of a post-World War, and after that, how they felt that we need to have some real story, real understanding, real background, so that the great storyteller broke the regular norms and rejected the normal traditional film, which is commercial. So this is the few filmmaker, those who are they pioneered the new wave cinema in the world, and it came basically from France. Fine. These are the few glimpses of the new wave cinema. Now, in India, I briefed into my research questions, but in a few of the time that I used in my literature of review, Mrinal Sen is a man who started new wave movement in India and become the pioneer of new wave cinema. Basu Chatterjee, Shyam Benegal, Kamal Swaroop, Manikal, Mani Ratnam, Aparna Sen. There are many people, they came into that particular legacy. Now, my main research questions are, what is the importance of new wave cinema in Indian film industry? And basically here I will cater to first Hindi cinema. How Indian new, and the second question and the next question was, is how Indian new wave movement benefited film directors and technicians. How the first first move towards Indian new wave films, Bhuvan Shom, Uski Roti, Sara Akash, are relevant to the today's perspective. Now, and the next was that the how the film Garam Hawa and Ankur in 1973 and 74, how they dig into socio-psychological system of India and how they are relevant. Now, methodology that I have used, that is secondary sources with the study and evaluation of significance of Indian new wave, and the method was the discourse analysis by watching cinema, and no, I was comparing to the today's what is happening in the current context. Now, the finding was very much important there, in that the France New Wave movement already took place in the New Wave making in the France. But in India, it emerged in 1969 with Mrinal Sen's remarkable film that is called Bhuvan Shom. Now, in 1960, the government of India, by that time in commercial cinema, we have faced many decades. Like in 50s, uh, the Dilip Kumar and Madhubalas, Anarkali to then various, but Bandhani, it maybe it came with a kind of thing, but it was always a commercial. Then Jungli, then Aradhana, these were the film. It was basically a commercial film. It was very much, into song, and the song was also inspired by Iranian theater there in India. But in India, there was a huge jerk in 1960, and Indian government started one initiative that is finance the film, and they start up the Film Finance Corporation and established the National Development of Corporation of India in 1975 under the Ministry of Information and Broadcast Ministry. B.K. Karanjia, who the latter was the Filmfare and started the Filmfare Award, and he have played an important role. By that time, it has started that we have to go with a new filmmaker, those who want to do that is not so commercial, but Indian government will allow them and finance them to make sure that they should also create the storyline, and they should tell some of the very impactful stories. And then at that very time, in national award got declared, that national award, and the film festival was announced. And at that point of time, the film certification board came, and that in that particular norm, they came up with the understanding that is they need to introduce one film school, that is, and then it has become a very revolution at that point of time, and they pointed out a Film Television Institute of India. Now, the purpose of the Film Financing Corporation to promote and funding budding filmmakers and encourage them to quality filmmaking. And these filmmakers such as Mrinal Sen, Manikar, Avtar Kaul, Shyam Benegal, Kundan Shah, Gulzar, many more, they broke the regular pattern of commercial cinema and shown real India, real issue, real Indian society. So in that context, that how new wave cinema movement benefited the film directors and technicians. The then Film Financing Corporation supported many new directors, filmmakers, and when Film and Television Institute of India, FTII, was set up in India in 1969. It was basically the premises of Prabhat Studio. At that point of time, many new talented directors, cinematographer, director, editor, scriptwriter, and emerged people. They came. It may be Nasruddin Shah to Om Puri to even the we call right now the commercial film director David Dhawan to our Sanjay Leela Bansali. They were basically the editor. And they started, and they actually started producing trained technicians, trained editors, cinematographers, and other few more. And it really helped at that point of time. The best coincident at that point of time, the film released in the new wave film released in same year in 1969. That is Bhuvan Shom by Mrinal Sen, Uski Roti by Mani Kaul, Sara Akash by Basu Chatterjee, and the coincidence that same year with same cinematographer, Mr. K.K. Mahajan. So the new wave cinema supposed to get many trained and talented youngster from FTII, NSD. Later on, it became powerful of the talent, and there are many people came in that. I discussed Pankaj Kapoor, Om Puri, Satish Kaushik, Ketan Mehta, and there are many more. Richard Kapoor. So here is the Bhuvan Shom, Uski Roti, Sara Akash. So these are the film. Now the comparative analysis, I chose two film desperately in the 70s. As I was talking in the terms of 90s, I chose this Garam Hawa and significant sources, how it impacted socio-psychological system of India. The new wave directors didn't adhere to any particular style. The first phase of Indian parallel cinema came into 1969 to 1967, and it often celebrates like the turning point of Indian art house, and it gave a birth and understanding of what is a parallel cinema. So I took here desperately Garam Hawa, that is MS Sathu, and the storyline by Ismat Chugtai, and the written by Kafi Azmi, and the many actors they came, the Balraj Sahani, Farooq Sheikh, and the Geeta Siddharth, they came up, and this story tells that how partition, how the Indian Muslim, those who stayed in India, how they suffered in partition, the constant
Ravina,
struggle.
please conclude.
Yeah,
Sorry to
absolutely.
interrupt you.
How they struggle. And then I took another storyline called Ankur, that is actually a hit to Indian socio-psychological system and the society, that was directed by Sham Benegal, and that time cinematography by Govind Nehlani. I took those films, how they hit. It talked about a casteism. It talked about infidelity. It talked about the frustration. It talked about that, the sexual desire. They talked about the realism, realistic understanding, how they came and they plot together like that. The Garam Hawa is basically, so I talked about in that, and I immersed this and understanding with auteur theory. Auteur theory is a filmmaker whose individual style to complete control all over the element, and they actually deliver how they exactly want to see their story. So now I will come with a little bit of conclusion. The study stated that Indian New Wave cinema movement helped the emerging trained film technician, directors, writer, actor, and platform to showcase their talent. The storytellers come up with the new ideas, showcase realistic stories from various parts of India. The stories of Indian New Wave cinema are not glorified, dramatized like mainstream commercial cinema. By 80s, New Wave was the words were finished in a smaller experimental film, Saeed Mirza Gussa Kyu Albert Pinto Ko Kyu Gussa Aya. So this kind of film were there. Like the New Wave film gave birth into parallel cinema, a film pattern that is between commercial and art house. The movement encouraged and aspirants who really want to join film industry, and they were trained. The stories they dealt with the stories like loneliness, desire of a woman, casteism, rural to urban woman, identity, the plight of partition, condition of brothel, corruption, and many more. Nowadays, if we look at around the newspaper, the various media and social discussion and real life news, it is actually the religious issue, lynching, casteism, corruption, fake news, so many more we have been taking care. And nowadays, if you look at last 4 to 3 decades, Hazaro Khwaishe Aisi, Black Friday, Iqbal, Gangs of Wasipur, The Lunchbox, Aankho Dekhi, The Village Rockstar, Thappad, Mulk. Mulk was dealt with just like Garam Hawa. That's section 15. So these are the movies that came up with again realistic understanding and a different from the commercial and the mainstream cinema. That was my understanding. So I try to wrap it so quickly. So that is all about my presentation on this topic. Thank you. If there any question or any suggestion, I would love and like to um, add on my
Thank,
paper.
thank you, Novena, for a very comprehensive, meticulously explained presentation.
Okay, I'm so glad that, ma'am, you asked that. Absolutely. It was basically first in Italian new realistic movie came into existence in Italy. It was basically how the aftermath of the World War and Jessica's Bicycle Thief and many other Italian new realistic movie came up with their, the main motto is to really to showcase the actual social issues of what is happening in the country, that recession, unemployment, and understanding. And they always emphasized on ma'am, my phone has got echo. So they always emphasize on real, not trained actors. They really wanted to confirm that there should be really main character and the no, very raw people. They should come and act, and they should shoot in a real location. It was the one, and after 20 years in 1960 and 50, they come with another hit in France. It happened in France, that is New Wave Cinema. So I really wanted to utilize it because it is a research paper. I had to concretize it, but in my review of literature, you will find the hint of neuralist. So Italian neorealism was always mentioned, and from Italian neorealism, our Indian films Satyajit Ray and even somehow Ritik Ghatak, they got so influenced, and they are the actual pioneer of this kind of parallel understanding. And that's why from the influence of them on other, even in later in New Wave, I forgot to use that Adur Gopal Krishnan. So they also came into head. First, they started with the Italian neorealism, and then after a decade and two, it came in France. So that I used it, but my main research portion was focusing on New Wave. So I just, because of time constraint, I just discussed with that.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Any other question? I would love to answer.
Yes, Novena, I have received one question.
Yes.
Can the OTT platforms based cinema be called as the new wave of Indian cinema?
Absolutely. If you look at it, I cannot theorize it, but absolutely here we are getting some notion. First, we are getting the new insurgence of long format of storytelling. Earlier it was serial, earlier it was cinema. But if you have to develop your character, not only just storytelling is not your purpose. To develop your character, there are few film like Family Man 1, Family Man 2, and it came up with Mirzapur to other many of the option, the Made in Heaven. So other, they are experimenting the realistic understanding, realistic storytelling. They're coming up with, even yesterday night I slept at 4:30, that Hasin Dulruba came up with a new understanding of women's desire, and it is normally still in Indian sociological context. It's not, we should not talk about it, but we are talking about it. We are giving a notion. But right now, I'm so afraid that again, the new censor board with Gavi giving out more cut and cut. But we should have that freedom to understanding what we will watch, what we will not watch. So I'm really looking forward that in OTT platform, and they are talking about, they are talking about sexual interest, even gender fluidity. They are talking about all this, and they are not only doing documentaries, they are giving it to real thought process. If you look at the Gili Pucci in the recent OTT platform, the Konkona Sen Sharma and Aditi Hadri, it was also about the bisexuality, and they're talking about, and that's a very realistic platform. They are not showcasing in the big hit world they are coming into. No, the reality, they are going and discussing about the, so this is OTT platform is absolutely giving you a platform to showcase the realistic understanding, and which is not very much glorified, but this real core heart. I'm very to it.
Thank you, Novena. Thank you so much.
Any more questions? I would love to answer, and thanks a lot for your kind cooperation.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, ma'am, shall we proceed to our next presenter?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes,
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. Perfect.
Yes, ma'am. At that point of unfortunately, I could not.
Okay.
So the next presenter for this technical session 2 is Ms. Shruti Pandey, independent researcher from Noida. And the title of her paper is Cinema and Social Transformation.
Wishing everybody a very warm good afternoon, though it's very warm. Very good afternoon to Anita ma'am. Good afternoon, sir, and ma'am, Bala ma'am. How are you, Manmeet ma'am?
Fine, ma'am.
Okay, so I wouldn't take much of time, but definitely would like to, I wanted to present the paper myself is why I'm here. My paper is basically conceptual in its study. It's not empirical study that I have done in the research. I would first like to talk about what motivated me to write this paper on cinema. Though I personally have only been involved with documentaries, I have not been into commercial cinema. Yet again, this is a time given into the COVID era, if I may call it. We wasted almost 2 years in COVID. I see more intelligent cinema coming up each day. That forced me to take a introspect into what kind of intelligent cinema has India been serving in connection to what world gave. So what I have done in the paper is that I have divided the paper into 5 sections basically, wherein starting from the Nanook of the North, which was purely based as an experimental film, uh, it was based on the life of the Eskimos, and how they manage their food and how they live. Moving it on to Mother India, which is obviously one of the legendary movies of India, directed by Mehboob Khan. From there, the next film that I have taken is Do Aankhein Parihar, which is again a very intelligent cinema. Very few of us know that actually it has been inspired by a true story. Then I moved in into the early 1970s and I took Manthan. That was India's first cooperative film, a film for which each farmer contributed rupees 2, and it gave rise to the white revolution across India. We all know that it was the Korean Varghese Amul thing that happened. It's been enacted by Girish Karnad, late Shri Girish Karnad ji, and it's definitely a marvel. I relish watching that movie. Unfortunately, most of the people who have enacted in the movie are not there. Post that, I come on to more a world cinema retrospective, where I have taken a fish called Black Fish. Oh, sorry, a film called Blackfish, which is again a spectacle in its way. Blackfish is talking about, a circus of sea animals. Blackfish has been directed by Gabriela Copperthwaite. It was based on the life of a shark, which is called Tilikum. Now, Tilikum happened to be a male, and she became, man-eater. She killed 3 of its coaches, yet the company did not decide to put down Tilikum because they were using Tilikum's sperms to, have more sharks with the same vigilance. So again, after the documentary was released, there was a revolution in US, and the court had to decide to ban the circus of the water animals, especially the sharks. After that, I've taken another very marvelous movie, which is called The Girl in the River. It's been directed by Sharmeen Obaid Chinoy. It's about the real story of a girl called Sabah. Sabah fell in love. It's based on honor killing. Sabah fell in love, and she eloped with the love of her life. And her father convinced her way back to home. And during her way back to home, he attempted a murder. He cut her face across and threw her in the river, thinking she's dead. But she survived and she was pregnant. And then there was this film which was directed by Sharmeen Obaid Chinoy. It was funded by HBO, that's Home Box Office. The film compelled the then ruling Prime Minister Shri Nawaz Sharif to ban the laws of honor killing. I mean, honor killing was legitimate in Pakistan till then, till 2014, and the film compelled the government to, sort of look at the laws and ban honor killing. And last but not the least, there's a very good movie which I happened to watch in 3 days. It is Sherni, which is being directed by Amit Masurkar. It's the first film where I have seen a commercial actress who, I would say she broke all norms. Vidya Balan is somebody who would not give in to the beauty norms of the film industry. She is okay with her weight. She is okay with what she feels. The film has been produced by T Series, and it's the first, film which is commercial also and non-commercial, because the way the film proceeds is very documentarian in nature. It's also based on the real life of a tigress. So my husband happens to be from Madhya Pradesh, and we have been talking about, tiger conservation projects a lot, and that's what gives me a bit of keen interest why we've never had any film talking about tiger conservation. Fortunately, now we have been able to have enough tigers back in India. So I've just given a long and short. I will quickly run across through the PPT, though I have not inputted much of information. It's there in the research paper. I have only showcased some of the posters of the film. So starting, is the screen share visible, Manmeet ma'am?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, so basically this is, as I said, this is a conceptual research, and I have taken Mother India. Obviously, this was the first film to be nominated for the Oscars. It lost to Falico Falconi's film with just one vote. What motivated me to take this film was that womanhood at that time, the definition of feminism at that time was, beyond what we see as feminism now. It was about the inner strength of a woman who fights all odds, loses one of her youngest kids in the flood. And then consequently, when everything seems to be settled, she decides not to let her son be abducting a girl from a marriage, and eventually that's the place where she kills her son by shooting. And that's why she is a epitome of the village. The protagonist is called Radha, and Radha is the epitome for the village, and whatever good happens, Radha inaugurates that good. One very important sequence of the film is when the film starts and she inaugurates a dam. Perhaps the soil is rich in certain minerals, the water comes out to be red. But when she looks at the water, uh, it makes her feel that it's her blood, the blood of the people who ensured that, this village will not be deserted. It was only Radha because of whom the village never is deserted and it's flourishing again. And that's why perhaps Mehboob Khan gave the name of the film as Mother India. This film was directed in 1927 with the name Aurat, but Aurat did not do well. In colored version, it came out as Mother India later with Nargis, and obviously we did very well with Mother India. Late Miss Smita Patil ji, one of my favorites. She's no more there with us, but I always, cherish and relish her acting skills, her movies. And that's what about Manthan. I just spoke Manthan. I chose Manthan because of its amazing story. Obviously, it fights the set norms of the society. It talks about one guy called Mishra, who is the Lala, who is the person who rules the milk production and milk cooperative. Whereas this veterinary doctor, which is Shri Girish Karnadji, who comes there and he wants people to get better price, which is 2 rupees a liter for the milk. But then the people are skeptical. Girish Karnad fights all odds. There are a lot of, aspersions that are cast against him, so on and so forth. And finally, after the government cooperative is set, the white revolution actually kick-started with the project of late Shri Varghese Kurianji. He just left us 2 years back. Now all the states, majorly, Anita ma'am, you would relate to me on that. We have Sanchi in Madhya Pradesh. We have Sanchi is again a milk cooperative in Madhya Pradesh. We have again Amul running very well in Gujarat, as well as Ananda here. Then RSPL has launched its milk cooperative in Uttar Pradesh also. So now almost the entire country is doing very well on milk production. Again, the marvelous thing about this film was that the farmers contributed 2 rupee each for the production of this film. There is no financer for this film, and that's what makes it, amazing. Though Aankhein Bara Haath, I would really like to. I really researched about the film. The first time I'd seen this film was when my father showed me, and I was crying as a child, as a 3-year-old kid. I was crying watching this movie. It's about a jailer who decides to use the criminals. These are all murderers. There are 12 people who are on payroll by the court. So he takes them and he makes an unfertile land get converted into a fertile land. But again, as is ruled in India, the petty money lender doesn't, agree to the way the revolution is brought about. and he eventually shoots the jailer out and the jailer gets killed. That's how the film ends. There was a Jewish person who was later named as Bharat Nanda. So Bharat Nanda ji was in very close contact to Sri Mahatma Gandhi ji, and he converted from a Jew to a Hindu. And Bharat Nanda, very few people know about him because he denies to be associated with the film. You will not find any credits given to Mr. Bharat Nanda on the credit titles of the film. That's because he said that if you are quoting me, I am going to sue you. So again, obviously, the director had the intention of spreading the good word. We all know that these films, see, I have taken up those films which are based on real stories, number one. And secondly, they also give rise to a new trend of the society. For example, we all know what Kiran Bedi later did at Tihar. It was again on the same concept of improving the criminals, not reprimanding them till death. So all the films that I have taken are trendsetters. And that is why beyond a point, we don't have much of the information about the international cinema before the 1950s. So post 1965, I had more information on those international films which were trendsetter, and that's why I took these two films. One was, the Blackfish, which is about Telecom. I must recommend all of you, please watch it. It's there on Netflix. It's an amazing film, and I'm sure you all will end up crying the way the atrocities are being done to these poor sea animals. It's heart wrenching. It's very bad what they do, and it's just like a sea circus. So now, fortunately, these commercial companies have been banned by the U.S. Federal Court, and they cannot.
Sorry to interrupt you. Please conclude.
Yeah, sure. I'm just on my second last film. So this is what the Blackfish is about. Post that I have, this is Sabah. You can see her face right cut across. That's what her father did to her. And her hand is also cut here. This is the girl in the river. She was found live, fortunately, in the river. I'm sorry. So that was again a subject of study because prior to this, we never had thought of Pakistan's reaction on the honor killing status. And the last but not the least is Shavni, which is again just a start for India. We really need to look at the wild animals and conserving the wild animals, and we really need to have stricter laws for poaching. All the Salman Khans should not get away by poaching the animals. So that's what my conceptual study of these 7 films have been. I would love to have any questions if they are there.
Anita ma'am says, Shruti ma'am, that very comprehensive and very compassionate presentation. Excellent presentation.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for your appreciation. Means a lot.
Okay, I request all the participants, if you have any questions, please post in the chat box. In the meanwhile, we will continue with our next presentation by Ms. Sakshi Arya.
Can I start presenting, please?
Yeah, the title of her paper is Freedom of Expression, Issues and Trends in Hindi Cinema. Yes, ma'am, please proceed.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Anita ma'am, and Amrish sir, Sushmita ma'am, all the participants here. I am Sakshi Arya. I am a research scholar with the School of Journalism and New Media Studies at IGNOU in Delhi. And my thesis, actually, I'm working on freedom of expression in Hindi cinema. And I hope I'm clear, everybody. So can you all hear me and the presentation is visible? I'm hoping that. And for this study, what actually, this study is actually a part of a step towards my thesis actually. And what I have done is that it is a secondary research study, and it deals with freedom of expression, issues and trends in Hindi cinema. So as I have already said, that my thesis is on freedom of expression in mainstream Hindi cinema. And towards that, what I did was to actually be able to understand the concept a little better, and for getting a more comprehensive understanding, and identify the problem areas that I should be studying in my thesis, I did the study. So this was like a stepping stone. So let me just start with that. And we all right here in this whole session are talking about cinema. Most of us are film students, and we all obviously realize the importance of cinema as a medium of entertainment and as a mass media. It has a huge power. It has great power to influence the common man, to influence the audience. And what uh, we have realized, film students have realized, and Miss Novina was also talking about, she just mentioned it very briefly, that it influences the audience, obviously, and as such, it is obviously uh, s- uh, comes under a great deal of scrutiny. And that scrutiny is not just limited to the CBFC. It has vast reaching consequences these days. And everybody from a common man to the judiciary and the political parties to politicians, everybody gets involved. And Indian cinema is one of the largest film producing industries in the world. And so in the recent times, we have seen that a lot of films have been mired in controversies. It is not a new trend. Controversies have been happening since Indian cinema started. So we've had Garam Hawa, we have had Kissa Kursi Ka, and all of these also. We've had Bandit Queen, which came under a lot of censorship and controversies. They were a topic of discussion. But since the reach of media has increased in the recent past, in the past few years, those controversies and the censorship issues have actually reached the common man faster, and the issues have become more encompassing. So in recent times, you can see here, I've mentioned some films. There's Kabir Singh, there's Urta Punjab, Padmavat, which created a lot of furor, and then Sins, PK, Dirty Picture, and a lot of issues came up. So, and what it boils down to is that it is an interference in the artistic expression, freedom of expression. That's what it boils down to. And it is not just one person or one entity or one organization that comes into it. There are a lot of varied forces. So, through a detailed examination, what I'm trying to do is identify all the different elements at play, which says it right here. And just for a little background on freedom of expression, uh, it the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which gives every person the right to express themselves, and freedom of opinion and expression. And in India, the Indian Constitution by Article 19(1)(a) also gives us the right to freedom of speech and expression. Obviously, it is not an all-encompassing, it is not a, what do you say, uh, it's not absolute. It is not an absolute right. Obviously, there are restrictions to it. The Article 19(2) poses reasonable restrictions on it. If it threatens the integrity and sovereignty of the country, restrictions can be placed on any art form. So, keeping all of that in mind, that's what I did. And as I've explained, that there are issues of contention which have come up in Hindi cinema. There have been political pressures, minority issues, social groups, religious groups, and the censor board also, so the CBFC, which we in most commonly call it the censor board, which is not the technical term. And it has become a very multidimensional and complicated matter. And it is, what I want to do is look at the different aspects of it. And this matter has been discussed by a lot of scholars and critics and everybody, film study scholars, media scholars. They've been talking about it. In fact, it is a very, when I was going through all the studies and trying to research on it, I realized that a lot of law students and everybody was also talking about it from the point of view of law. But my perspective obviously is from the point of media and media students and media scholars. And I have proposed to examine the issues and trends that have emerged, and for a comprehensive understanding of this topic. So for this, I started with a review of literature, which was a really difficult task, segregating all the studies, understanding freedom of expression, not just in film, in other art forms also. So it is not just films that come under scrutiny, other art forms also do that. And but as I mentioned earlier, film is more in the face, more popular, and as such comes under more detailed scrutiny of that. So these are some of the papers that I studied, and which talked about this, starting from the draft cinematographic bill from the 2020. Then there were some case studies that people did, which is the moral policing of cinema was mentioned in those, and the overall censorship view from the point of view of CBFC and others were discussed in these. And so the objective of this study was to, as I mentioned already, it is a secondary research study. So what I've taken is I've taken a lot of studies that have already been done on this topic or related topic, which is freedom of expression, or the trends and controversies and issues, etc., etc. And I have taken an overview of those studies, and through a study of those researchers, I have tried to analyze them and explore the various issues that emerge from it. So these were the two aims of this particular study. And so methodology, as I said, I collected a lot of research papers. I sifted through them, and after that, there was a holistic review of all this literature and Indian cinema, controversies, trends, freedom of expression. All of these were, and these were analyzed based on the objectives of the studies, the findings, and the conclusions that the researchers drew from it. And these were based only on research studies. I have not included articles and even research articles or secondary studies in this. There were very few secondary studies, to be honest. Majorly case studies and primary studies were in. So how did I go about it? The methodology is that I used these different search terms that I've already mentioned, and I searched through as many for as many published studies as I could through Google Scholars, Research, Gate, Elsevier, Taylor and Francis. I did an offline search of publications also. I went to libraries. I went to the Jamia library. I went to the JNU library. I went to WCA. All of these libraries that I could get there, and I went through their various journals that I could find and the issues that I'm looking at, and I tried to look at those. So after that, then I had already set a criteria, as I have mentioned earlier. These controversies and freedom of expression and issues and trends were some of these things. And the papers that fulfilled those criteria and used primary data analysis, those I included in the study. So this is how the data extraction actually happened: the keyword search, the filtering of studies based on title, then the filtering of studies on abstracts, and filtering of studies based on type. And then for the final study, I have included 31 research papers in this. So this is the detail of the data extraction. That was just a graphical representation of it. So when I had collected all the papers from various resources, first of all, I filtered them based on the title. So if the title was only not suitable, or it just did not fit into the criteria, some studies were filtered on that. Then I went through all the abstracts, because obviously abstracts usually give us an idea of what the study would contain. So then some studies got filtered through that. And after that, then I went through the studies in detail. And then I figured out 31 research papers. As I mentioned, all the secondary research studies, thesis, dissertations, and project reports were excluded. Only primary research analysis studies were included in this. So, and on once I had finalized those 31 papers, what I did was I went through their objectives, research methods, analysis, and the conclusions to get a understanding and identify the issues for analysis. So there are 31 research papers. There is a dearth of time. I cannot go into the details of all of the research papers. So I have made this table which mentions all the papers. And starting from 2020, when I actually started this study 2 years back. But I realized before sending this, before finalizing it somewhere in last year, that a few studies had been updated. So I included that also. So the last study that I took was from 2020. Starting from 2020 to 1995, I have studies from as many as I could find and which were relevant to the topic. I have tried not to exclude, not to be biased. Obviously, as a researcher, that shouldn't even be happening. So, and the issues that were raised in most of these are mentioned here in this last column of the table. So we have had historical issues that have come up: gender violence, gender, women in Bollywood, political abuse of women, women in violent roles, misrepresentation and underrepresentation of women, history again, and communal conflicts again is a very common theme that people have discussed: secularism versus communalism. Even though this papers discuss that, even though we are a secular nation, but there are undertones of communalism that are happening. There are problems which are happening. Then socio-political issues. If you read the title of this paper, the controversy discussed the Arakshan ban and how censorship and everything played a role in it, and the aggressive portrayal of women. This was about avenging women, how they have reversed the roles and they're not passive observers. So through Kahani, Gulab Gang, and Queen. And again, religion, any kind of religious issues that crop up. If you question any religious practices, that is what the problem is. Religious symbolism that has come up in various films, then politics again, and religion, women and patriarchy, the avenging women, communalism, religion, communal rift. So if you can see through this table that there are common themes which have emerged from it.
Yeah.
So this actually was the aim of the study, to identify these common themes which have come up. And now in my discussions section, I will discuss those themes. So what came up was that there were 5 major themes that were very clearly visible through all this study. The first was political issues. Obviously, politics is an important part of our country. We are a democracy, and politics is actually ingrained into the very fabric of our society. And it plays a very prominent role in the film industry also now. And there are 2 major concerns. Political issues has 2 major concerns, not just one is that the influence would maybe not the right word, interference and influence both of politics, political parties, politicians, and all the other political forces in the industry and in the filmmaking process. And obviously, when you raise a political or a socio-political issue in a film, like just as I mentioned in the previous slide, Arakshan, it was a very hot socio-political issue. If you look at Rajniti, since they wanted to pick up a political issue in that film, it obviously came under the scanner. So, and a lot of controversy happened around it. There were bans, there were protests, judiciary gets involved in all of these cases. In not all of these cases, obviously, but a lot of these cases go to the courts. Gender and women issues. So we are a patriarchal society, and we have been taking through the years smaller steps towards women's rights, gender equality, and a lot of women issues. But we have a long way to go. And some of these issues that are there are not even identified or not even recognized as issues, that as problems actually. And when any filmmaker has tried to pick up those topics, pick up those issues and bring them to light, there is obviously a pushback, and that pushback can come from a lot of sources. So like treatment of widows and widow remarriage, there's equal pay and all of these issues that have come under the scanner. And the next was religious issues, and as I mentioned a little
Sorry
earlier.
to interrupt you, please conclude.
Yeah, I have just 2 more issues after that, and I'll conclude. So this is the third one, and just 2 more after that, and they're not very long. So religious issues. We obviously have the right to freely practice any religion of our choice in the country, but if anybody questions any of those practices, if you look at films like Sins or you look at Water, anything which has questioned any kind of religious practice or religion, and the way the Da Vinci Code was banned, so that obviously creates a conflict. And religious groups and communities come up saying no, ye galat hai, or aap hamare religion ko defame kar rahe hain, and all of these kind of volatile subjects which really create a lot of debate. And apologies, I went back instead of going to the next slide. And communal issues. Religion is one thing, but the conflict that comes out of religion, the communal strifes that we have, obviously is. So any films that have tried to look into those, we have had communal tension, communal riots. In Gujarat, riots have happened. Sikh riots of 1984 happened. Then the riots after the in Bombay, which happened after the Babri Masjid demolition happened. And the films that have talked about it have really been tried to be suppressed. We have had Amu, we have had Firak, and all of these films which really were questioned, and they were obvious. Some of them were banned even after the judiciary and the CBFC cleared those films. They were still banned in few states, citing law and order problems, that they could raise a problem there. So they have some have been outrightly banned, and there have been special screenings to get approval from political parties or from the religious communities, and cuts have been introduced, several changes have happened in all of these things. And the last one is historical accuracy and authenticity. So we have a rich cultural history, and we have been ruled by a lot of people. We've had the Mughals, the Afghans, we have the British who have ruled the country, and they've all left their different stamps on the country, and it has obviously shaped what we are today. But amongst those, when we talk about Britishers or we talk about the Mughal invasion, there have been people who have come up, risen up, and actually fought those forces off. And those people are legends. They're in our history books. They have become a part of our folklore, of our culture, of the legends that penetrate the country. And anything which actually tries to maybe even tweak it a little, not even just tamper it, but tweak it a little and show it on the big screen, then that conflict of culture and the uh, trends that have happened, the legends and the society happens. And that we have seen this in Bajirao Mastani and Padmavat, and Jodha Akbar and all of these films. They had the directors had to face a lot of issues because of that. So to conclude, this was an attempt to analyze the issues of contention that arise in Hindi film industry and several subjects that tend to create problems. And so the five major issues that cropped up were politics and religion and communal issues, and women issues, including everything from homosexual themes or gender conflicts and all of these, and historical representations. So, and the elements that are involved in these kind of conflicts are vary from religious and social groups, like the Rajput Karni Sena that was involved in the whole issue of Padmavat, and then politicians and political parties and state and central governments too, and the judiciary has had to step in, and CBFC obviously plays a role in it because it is the certification body, film certification body of the country. And so the issue has become highly debated. And recently, in last month only, we have had what is being called the super censor, the cinematograph bill amendment of 2021, which is a big question mark. But my study happened before this was released. But for my thesis, obviously, I will be considering that. It is a huge deal. So I was listening to a show. I was watching a show on NDTV just the day before, and it was a huge debate that the autonomy of the film certification of the whole process and the freedom of expression is under question. What it proposes is to devolve the autonomy and give power to the government, which is obviously, as a democracy, it should not be happening. And so that's it for the future scope. As I already mentioned, this was a stepping stone, and primary study would obviously be a better place to look even more in detail on the study and identify the issues and go through them in a lot of more detail. And each of the issues that have been identified, the five issues that I mentioned, can be a study in itself. They are in-depth issues. They have a lot of gray areas. They have a lot of layers to it, which obviously can be explored for future studies. So these were obviously the references that I used. And thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Sakshi. So Anita ma'am has shared her observation in the chat box. I would like to read. Very meticulous and systematic in approach, and then joining in of core research by categorizing. And Dr. Kiran Bala also shared her view. Ms. Sakshi, it's a systematic study with concrete findings. Good job. Also, we have another question from Mr.
Thank you, Anita ma'am. Thank you, Kiran ma'am, for your views. And I will try to, obviously, in my primary study, I will like to take it a step forward and do a better job.
And Sakshi, there is one question from Mr. Pramod Kumar Pandey, assistant professor from DME Media School. The period films like Padmavat, Jodha Akbar, and other similar films like Panipat do seem to provide conflicting opinions, leading to debates about distortion of history. How do you see it as a threat to the society that is into less reading and heavier reliance on the popular movies for forming opinions?
Okay, see, as I said, I have identified that as a issue of contention. And see, if you look at a film like Padmavat, the first issue that arises is whether it is a legend or is it a historical fact. That itself is in question.
Question.
Historians and scholars have been debating that issue not just when the film came. That issue has been there since before the film came, before the film was released. So history obviously is our has what has shaped it today. And obviously when somebody goes to looking at the Indian population, not everybody has access to education and cannot read history in books. So obviously they form that opinion that jo hame screen pe dikhaya ja raha hai, that is true. So when we look at Padmavat, that Mughals were the Afghans were really bad people and they destroyed our country and they were the barbarians and everything. That has come across. That is a problem, but that is also one of the layers. As I said, it is a multi-dimensional issue. There are a lot of layers to it. And what you're saying is absolutely right, that that is a problem and that also needs to be addressed. As a filmmaker has the right, as Navina was saying in her presentation, they're auteurs. They tweak this, and for profits, for making a good film, all this has to be molded. But it should not be so molded that it completely goes away from the actual fact and presents on screen something which is absolutely just not even close to reality. So there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance by the filmmaker and there has to be a balance by the forces that are in play. So that, I think, is what it should entail.
Okay, thank you, Sakshi.
Thank you,
Uh,
everyone.
Thank you very much.
I think our next participant, I request Ritik sir and Sumantra sir to please help Anita ma'am for the technical guidance and the internet support.
You really have done a considerable amount of work. You said 2 years. And what I find is towards the end, with all the inputs that you've given in terms of categorizing, and towards the end, there is still more matter to zone in. And to use your own words, you can, your conclusions, each of them can be pursued singly for further study. But I think you have understood that yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. Now I am inviting the next presenter of this technical session, Professor Dr. Amri Saxena, Dean DME Media School. And the topic of his research is Center Acquiring Revisionary Powers on Films with CPFC Certificate and Assessment of Proposed Amendment in Cinematography Act. Please, sir.
As far as my presentation in this paper is concerned, this paper is still in the making because I have decided to work on something which is very, very latest. Though there had been talk on this for a few months, but then the concrete steps have been taken by the government very recently. We all know that we have a system of film certification, which is part of the Cinematograph Act 1952. And under this act, there is a provision of creating a censor board. Censor board is a very, common term that we use in reference to Central Board of Film Certification. Now, this is a board which actually previews the films and issues certificates to films. So this category of certification have kept on changing time to time, but then ultimately the certificate is only after the certificate issuance. Only after that there is a public screening of that film possible, and this applies to all feature films, documentaries, etc. And we all have been coming across with these kind of reports, not, in recent times, but it has always been there, whichever party would have been in power. Whatever they don't like, they normally try to stop it at the level of the censor board. And what is done normally, these parties, those who are sitting in power, they nominate the chairman of the film certification board, somebody who thinks like them, who believes in the ideology of that political party, or who is close to the political masters. That is how the government tries to control the films from the behind. Uh, though the formal procedure is that there is a board which is sitting, which is watching the film. There are few members in the board, and they will all giving their opinions, exchanging their thoughts, and then if there is, I mean, everything is all right in the film, then a certificate is issued. If the board members find that there is some problem with the film, they will recommend certain suggestions, certain cuts to the filmmaker, and the filmmaker has to abide by that, and then the film will be given the certificate after the film, amended film, the modified film is submitted to the board, and board again watches the film and finds that it's appropriate, all its suggestions have been carried out, then the certificate is issued. Now, there are problems at this level also. The board members are also the people who are close to the ruling parties. So, that level, the problem is there. But then there is a board, there are so many members. So, not one or two member will try to supersede as far as the decision making is concerned. But if some filmmaker is not convinced with the viewpoint of the board members, means the viewpoint of the Central Board of Film Certification, like if some cuts have been introduced, have been suggested, that the filmmaker feels that those cuts are unwarranted, that will affect adversely the film, then there is an option before the filmmaker. They can go to the tribunal. So above the Central Board of Film Certification, there is a tribunal. Tribunal will listen to the grievance of the filmmaker, and then the decision made by the tribunal, that will be termed the final thing. Now, in this whole process, the central government or any state government, they have no role to play. No role to play means they have limited powers in the sense that the board members are appointed by them, the board chairman is appointed by them, but then they cannot take a decision whether this film is to be screened or not to be screened once a certificate has been given. Now, here is a problem. This government, this central government feels that in the Cinematograph Act, there is an inherent thing that the government has a role, and that role has to be over and above whatever procedure has been laid down. Now, this is a matter of interpretation, because law is all about interpretation. This is the interpretation of this government, that the government already has the final power uh, over the powers of the board, and which is very much inherent in the act. Now, that is inherent in the act or not is something which requires judicial interpretation. But what the judiciary says on this issue, if we refer to the two recent judgments in 2019, a judgment was by Karnataka High Court, wherein it said that once a certificate has been issued, then the government cannot decide whether the film is to be screened or not. And the role of the government is then to make sure, to ensure the law and order so that the film is screened. Now, the same viewpoint was endorsed by the Supreme Court in 2020. Under these circumstances, the government has been of the viewpoint that this has to be rectified according to government, since they don't see eye to eye with the viewpoint of the Supreme Court and the High Court. Then the government thought that they should initiate an amendment in the Cinematograph Act. Now, mind it, if we try to further understand the provisions of the Cinematograph Act and the freedom which is enjoyed by cinema as a medium. Now, if we look into the Constitution to have a better understanding, deeper understanding of the issue, the Constitution has 19(1)(a), which is about freedom freedom of speech and expression. And at the same time, it also has Article 19.2, which prescribes reasonable restriction. And if we go back to 1970, uh, when the Supreme Court made its judgment in the case of K. Abbas, Khwaja Ahmad Abbas, he had gone to the Supreme Court challenging the whole system of the censor board or the preview of the film and giving and the certificate issuing of the board to the films on the ground that he said that the constitution has guaranteed freedom of speech and expression, and cinema, like other medium like print media or any other audio visual media, should enjoy the same freedom like as newspapers enjoy. But Supreme Court did not agree with his viewpoint. Supreme Court said that cinematic freedom is covered under Article 19.2, which is part of the reasonable restrictions. And we find when we look into Article 19.2, it encompasses so many things. Public order is there, the decency and morality is there, security of the state is there, sovereignty of the country is there. So obviously, in the name of all these things, any film can be stopped from screening. But then the judiciary is there, which does not find this kind of interpretation. Now you find there is a change in the opinion of the judiciary from 1971 to 2019. In K. Abbas, the Supreme Court was of a different opinion, but it's not changed in 2019 and 2020. But obviously, there is a deviation from that opinion by the Supreme Court. And this has compelled the government to amend the Cinematograph Act and making a provision wherein the central government is allowed to exercise its revisionary powers, which means any certificate will have of no meaning. And as Sakshi was referring to few films, now any such film which the existing government, whichever government is in power, I'm not precisely talking about this government, any government which is in power, if it feels that any film which has been made is distorting history, is showing the Indian culture or Hindu culture or the Muslim culture or any culture for that matter in a bad light. Like Pramod Pandey asked this question about the distorting the history. Though I believe there is nothing like distortion in history. Whatever history we know, we read, is always distorted. We can never be sure that this history is the most authentic history. Every history is distorted. So whenever any filmmaker is approaching a film, it is always his or her interpretation. You must look at film the way you look at the book. There, different authors are writing different books. Like if you take the example of the Indian freedom movement, number of authors have written diverse books, and how they looked at the independence movement in India, how they looked at the role of different political leaders in the pre-independence period. There can be no final truth in that. That's completely the opinion of the author, opinion of the filmmaker, the way he sees through the certain developments, and the way he or she decides to make a film. So obviously that freedom has to be there. If that freedom is curbed, then what will remain in the hands of the filmmaker? Any filmmaker will put in 1 year, 2 year, lot of efforts, lot of money in making a film, and it is also getting the censor board certificate, and finally government says no to the screening of that film. This is completely arbitrary, and this completely against the basic spirit of Indian constitution, and particularly referring to the right to freedom of speech and expression, Article 19(1)(a). So I'm basically working on this whole concept, and there can different opinion on this, and that is how through interviews, I am in the process of collecting opinion of the filmmakers, opinion of the film scholars, and also the opinion of the legal experts, because there are a lot of legal and constitutional matters involved into this. So this whole process is yet to complete, because this whole draft of the bill has been put by the government in public domain, perhaps in the last week. I'm forgetting the exact date, perhaps on 26, if I remember correctly, 26th of June. And nowadays, I believe many of you must be knowing that the government has started a procedure, and this was started by the last government only, Manmohan Singh's government. Any act which is being finally made by the parliament, the government, once the act is draft, I mean, it's called the draft bill, then the government invites people's opinion on that. So practically it's put in the public domain, which is very much in the democratic spirit. Any draft bill is passing through this stage. It's another thing, whatever amendments are proposed or whatever suggestions are made, nobody knows with regard to any bill on which the government would have invited the people's opinion. We all do not know as to what suggestions were made to the government, because the government is never transparent on this. But at least for the sake of getting the public opinion, they have put this act also in the public domain. And the last date of the submission of opinion was 2nd of July. So today is 3rd of July. So obviously we do not know what kind of suggestions would have been made to the government, and I am yet to complete the opinion collection, all experts and the field people on this issue. Once that's done, then obviously I will be in a position of writing a complete paper. But then I thought that I could discuss all this at this point in this forum with everybody. So that is all from my side.
Thank you, sir. This has been an excellent and a very relevant and a crucial point and cusp. You have chosen this topic for deliberation. As you have rightly said, that this needs a feedback from film fraternity, from government officials. An element that comes to my mind is while film fraternity has to give their viewpoints in terms of the freedom which is due for making a film, self-regulation by filmmakers will become more stringent in order to avoid such issues with their films later. Because we teach as media students, media educators to students, when you make films, you need to keep a witness stance. But if it's fiction, then you're right. You have the freedom to express your true experience in film, as the case may be. So there have to be parameter fraternity and scholars where it is a win-win situation for all parties and stakeholders. I mean, it's not an easy job. But it's a very crucial point you picked up, and kudos.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Next presenter for this technical session is Dr. Dheeraj Shukla from Department of Journalism, Uttarakhand Sanskrit University, Haridwar. And the title of his paper is Cinema and Social Transformation, an analysis of the depiction of social issues in films.
First of all, I would use this opportunity till Mr. Dheeraj comes. The doors and the room is open for you, sir, as priority. But as there is a lull, I think I'll just, first of all, take this opportunity to thank all the researchers. Before that, I would like to humbly thank DME Media School for inviting me to chair this event. My experience in a nutshell has been as a media professional in the first phase of my career, followed by being a media teacher, and now a researcher since the last 10 years. So it's been a good 34 years of being with the industry, with teaching and research cumulatively in India, UK, Amsterdam, and the Southeast Asia. I still say today I'm a learner, because in our line of media teaching, ICAN4 is like a benchmark, and it's like, reinvigorating process for the mind to zone in on the current scenarios. So my dear students and fellow men, okay, Dr. Dheeraj says I'm not able to connect. Okay, sir, keep it open. I would just suggest you to keep trying. It just might turn the tide in your favor. And meanwhile, I have taken the liberty to speak to all the August gathering here. So I was saying, to continue, that today more than ever, before, I realized that it's been like a round circle for me in being a media practitioner, a teacher. What goes round comes round, kind of. Because I can't just sit and teach my lectures in my classroom oblivious of what's happening in the media world around me. So basic awareness through interactions, more awareness through such conferences is crucial for the survival and progress of media teachers, educators. And now we are almost like a community in this new normal, with having different and similar problems. And like my senior colleague Jatinji was saying yesterday at the online challenges, and Sharon Wilson, that this is the time to share ideas, share problems. Even a simple thing like, in my case, lack of audio connectivity should not flurry me up, because the main thing is to exchange information and do the duty that I have to do. So I would say that ICAN has periodically, in the last 12 months, DME Media School, and the ICAN 3 and 4 that I have. Okay, I'm very happy to see the screen has come. So I will rest my talk here, and we look forward to you, Dr. Dheeraj Shukla. Please go ahead, full steam. Like I was telling Manmeet, the real heroes of and the heroines of today's session are our research presenters. And we are the mediators, the facilitators, and as teachers, media educators, I see myself facilitating my student to come out with his abilities time and again. And it's a very challenging experience online. Besides being a teacher in your area, you are a counselor. But I think we have all become more human in terms of empathy. We were earlier too, but we have become more so now. I will go back to all the things of being a media practitioner, a media teacher, and a researcher have come like a round circle. In that when I go back to my experience as a media practitioner, which is very relevant even today, because I actively research and script for films. And that is one of the reasons I'm a visiting faculty by choice, though I was an HOD for 3 years at a college in Mumbai. I still continue to associate with all the colleges for the last 17 odd years and 34 years cumulatively with my work. My experience has been that, when you're working in the industry, let's take that for an example, even if you're an intern, it never starts, even if a job is assigned, that every day somebody's going to come and tell you what to do. You have to observe, you have to initiate by requesting, you have to be part of discussions where you're not called by going and standing at the corner politely. There are times when things don't happen for you, but that is all part of learning. It's all part of the experience. And what in the media industry matters, of course, is your caliber and ability, but also how much of a people's person you may be. Now, that doesn't mean I have to chat if I'm a shy person. you can still be receptive in a group with your quietness and helping. People in the media industry, I remember when I last interviewed Mahesh Bhatt for a program many years ago. That was the time I was trying to break into the Mumbai media scene. And I remember when I interviewed him, I asked him this question, what is the thing that keeps you going as a filmmaker towards the end of the interview? And he said, Anita, I always keep my diary full, that is, what did I do last? Even if it was 6 months ago, it was a process which I did with pride. So I learned that even through my interview with Mr. Anupam Kher. We have a mindset in our mind, film characters, film personalities are a certain type. But actually, if you address them as one-to-one, human to human, they respond accordingly. I don't know them well enough to vouch for them, but I'm saying for that moment of time when I interact with a director or a producer, you have to see the body language and respond. Having said that, learning at this age of college and as an intern is the time to just respond to instructions, do the duties, because with that builds up trust with the people you're associated with. And maybe somebody who's made you assistant for say 6 months might tell you to do a locum production, which was the case with me through my mentor, Dr. Manisha Dikshit of EMMRC, University of Pune, the first place where I got a job. And the rest was actually just a matter of progression, working long hours. We don't have time frames. Now in the new normal, even at home, if I'm scripting and researching for a film, I will be talking at various levels of cognition. I might have a chat with Manmeet about an issue which she's also dealt with. At the same time, I might talk or see a film. So at very multi levels, you need to operate as a media to be professional. If I don't want to be a camera woman, I need to know how to operate a camera in the most basic sense, so that if I'm inclined towards writing a screenplay, I can plan that shot as well, which will be a complimentary service to the cameraman who will say, okay, yeah, she's just not script writing. So I say, as a media writer, professional teacher, you need to embrace all that you can in these college years and learn wholeheartedly and work in the industry with the skills which you hone in, which then, sharpen, and then you decide. Like for the, I think Sakshi's research is a very good example of how she explored with the idea of using this research as a stepping stone for her thesis. But as she delved further and further into her research, she's come out with so many categories through so many filter processes, through and now also the findings can go in many directions depending on which choices to take. So if you look at scenario, which students do I have, the media educators and students in terms of job prospects in the cinema. I remember hearing a webinar lecture 2 days ago by a very senior documentary filmmaker who said that, you may see the best of films, like Shruti spoke about Nanook of the North, Manthan, then Bhuvan Shom was spoken by the earlier researcher. We see these films to gather mass of knowledge, to understand techniques. Like Satyajit Ray was an institution. He was the person who used to write, script, make his posters. He had a family business of a printing press. So he actually learned all the aspects. So when you see Pather Panchali, you can see that each component of that frame in a shot is scripted to the finest detail. His films were the most economical, budgeted. Today, the need for students is to understand that the attention span for themselves also is short films, educational films, promos, depending on the need of the client, or if you've given a brief by a teacher, need to be followed with a good amount of research. Students need to understand that unless you feel strongly, either negatively or positively for a film, the film is not going to work until you really have sieved it through various layers to come in to an experience. Like I remember when I was teaching in Xavier's, there was a brief I gave them to make a 2-minute documentary piece, because that was the curriculum. I had only 7 lectures, and how do you do everything? So one of the students came up with an idea of pollution and Clean India campaign and all that. I said, all this is okay, but it doesn't push dal nahi gali. Why are you not interested in typical ideas of presenting film ideas? Because you want to touch what touches you. So we actually had to, in Hindi, we say, na, khured ke. The student came out with an idea. She said, ma'am, I am trying to say, why should anybody see a film? Why don't I take myself as a story a protagonist, where I'm trying to make a film on keeping the city clean. And I say exactly what, how I'm trying to get the real shot or the real story plot. So in the end, she finally got it through a lot of trial and error and observation and research, where she's sitting in a rickshaw eating a banana. And when she unfolds the banana, she finishes eating it and she's about to throw it outside the rickshaw, and she stops and she puts it in her bag. And she says, this is what we all need to do at various levels in the film. So the way you treat a film depends also on the experiences. You may not be able to do many, but you can observe. Mr. P.K. Nair, the ex-archive, National Film Archive chairman, I had the pleasure and actually honor of meeting him not once or twice, but when I was employed at EMMRC, I had to take the copyright of certain films. And he said, we teach students of film and television to observe. For example, observing, say this conference, if you want to make it into a film, how can we give aspects which have actually gone into the making of ICAN4? They have been enormous behind the scenes, which would be very artistic and creative to capture. So observing not just the obvious, but re-observing to find out what you can do. So qualities for a filmmaker range from observation, reading, writing, watching films, working in a team, lots of egos. Students have an idea for a story, somebody's idea goes forward. Listening to people. I'm sure this is not a class session that I need to go into, but these are things which make a person sensitive to being a film reviewer, a teacher, even a filmmaker. Some don't come by the book or the courses. Some come just by their experiences. So I would say ICAN4 is a great deliberative platform for, looking at cinema. And today's cinema, as one of the earliest researchers who spoke was talking about, I think it was Anchal. Yes, it was, we respect a lot of our earlier films, and they have a legacy which we always fall back on. The current brand of films that you see on the OTT, or they are very watchable films, short films, educational films, documentary films. The regional films have an amazing flavor and texture, which many of the, with due respect, Hindi films don't often have. And today in the OTT platform scenario, almost out of 10 options, 9 people choose non-English options to see. So there's a lot. Like I said, I'm a learner also myself. I always feel, to quote Mirzapur's scriptwriter when I interviewed him for a program, Puneet Krishna, he said, keep the mind fertile. As long as you keep your mind fertile, your kitchen fires will run. Keep writing. That was what he said for scriptwriters, because he was a scriptwriter. But I would say it doesn't have to be that you have to be like somebody else. You find through trial and error your own niche, your own ability. And film is never a one-man show. It is a collaborative effort. Today in the OTT world, 5G experiments are being carried out by Sony, BBC, LiveView, so many production multinational companies coming together to work together who were earlier competitors. This is the world that we are in. Are, I'm glad to see Mr. Dheeraj Shukla. Over to you, please.
It's really a privilege for me to present my paper before August Galaxy of Mass Educators. My research topic is cinema and social transformation, an analysis of the depiction of social issues in films. Actually, cinema is considered a mirror of society by many scholars. And in India, cinema has become the integral part and culture of the modern society, where people not only get entertainment, but receive some new ideas, some thought-provoking issues. Hence, this background compelled me to see what the present day, specifically 21st century, new directors are raising the issue on media, cinema. That is why I have chosen this topic. Cinema, as everyone knows, cinema is the mirror of the contemporary society. It reflects the social reality and aspirations of people too. Films are not only a source of merely entertainment, but it is also a source of gratification and motivation for the masses. If we recall a song "Dur Hato Hai Duniya Walo," Hindustan Hamara hai, very popular song of film before independence film, Kismat, which became a national slogan. Hence, cinema operates in a social milieu. Social system provides a framework for the cinema. And whatever is shown related to social system in the film actually delineates and defines the dynamics of the social system. Social transformation is one of the dynamics of the society. Cinema reflects not only the social order of the privileged society, but also the emerging changes taking place in social norms and practices. Cinema or movie is one of the strong mass media platforms where social issues may be raised like other mainstream media to inform and educate masses. Its influences on the masses is tremendous due to its wide reach and storytelling narration style. Hence, it becomes pertinent to assess the portrayal of the social issue on the silver screen. Keeping in view these aspects of the cinema, an effort has been made by the researcher, myself, to find out how Bollywood films are depicting the social issue. This study shows what types of social issues have been depicted on the film screen in recent years. The study throws light on the approaches of the film directors towards the treatment of film stories regarding the social issues in their film. The research question of my paper or my study is, what types of social issues of Indian societies have been raised and treated in the recent Hindi film? The rationale behind the research, as I have already mentioned, cinema is not only a very powerful mass media, but also a part of our modern culture. Cinema are not just the mirror of the contemporary society. It also raises issues and debate through mode of audio-visual presentation, which is very powerful and impactful. It makes the masses aware and educated on the different social issues. This study is an effort to analyze the depiction of the contemporary social issues in Hindi cinema. It tries to throw light on the issues of the contemporary Indian society, delineated in the recent years' movies. The study is going to well to comprehend the approaches of the 21st century Hindi films and their directors. This research is an exploratory research. The exploratory research design has been used in this study, as well as the content analysis and background test methods have been applied for the analysis of the data. The sampling size is very limited. The purposive sampling has been applied for the data collection. 4 Hindi films have been chosen, which were released during 2015 and 2020 for this. This last 5 objectives of the study is to know what types of issues are raised by recent Hindi films in the cinema. Second, to evaluate the approaches of film directors in portrayal of social issues on the screen. And the third, to explore the treatment of the social issues in Hindi cinema, particularly on screen, their representation by characters, by various other modes of audio. The limitations of the study are 3. The first, the study is based on exploratory research design. The sampling method is purposive, and vector is partially applied on the selected film. After gathering the data, the researcher analyzed and found the following things, which I will delineate here one by one. The first movie which I am discussing here is Gabbar is Back, which was directed by Krish. The film is based on 5 of citizens against corruption. Corruption is a big issue. It's very long. It is gobbling up our resources as well as creating mental distress among the society. The theme of the film is corruption. The director delineates the corruption issue in such a way that the fight against corruption is long. It cannot be won, provided people raise voices against it and fight collectively. Although director used anti-establishment approach, but finally he succeeded to give the message to find a solution given framework of our democracy and collective empowerment. The approach of the director towards the raising and debating the issue is auteur and anti-establishment. The second film which I took for the study is Toilet Frame, directed by Sri Narayan, which is against a very relevant topic in modern days. It is related to hygiene and Government of India's campaign. It is a mainstream commercial which deals with the issue of women hygiene through comedy drama on this. Yet it does not compromise to give the strong message to the masses and tweak the consent, particularly the orthodox viewers, orthodox movie watcher. The film highlights the plight of rural women in the absence of toilet, which is a reality even today. It depicts how the orthodox thinking is a hurdle for a progressive society. The approach of the director depicting the issue is feminist and progressive one. The third film which I went through is Article 50, directed by remarkable President era director Anita. The film is based on the theme of caste and corrupt moral values of powerful people who are power. The film depicts that how caste system still prevails in modern society, which is proving a big hurdle for a just and equitable society. The approach of the director, this film is progressive and structuralist. He tries to show the plight of Dalits who need the equal and just treatment in the society. The law provides equal rights to every. The Indian Constitution does not allow any discrimination on the basis of caste, creed, and color. And the title of the article itself demonstrates the intention of the movie. The third film is Upward, which is against remarkable film of Anita. The theme of the film is based on patriarchal dominance and domestic violence somewhere. The film shows the plight of a woman in the patriarchal system. It points out towards domestic violence issues. It tries to delineate that mutual respect between husband and wife is necessary, which highlights our ethos, our century-old traditions also in a way, where women have the highest respect in the society. Even a slap can destroy the bonding between husband and wife that leads to break the family. The approach of the director, although the thappad is here symbolic, but through thappad incident, director raises those issues on patriarchal approach, discrimination against women, particularly housewives. The approach of the director is feminist and postmodern toward the treatment of the issue. Director raises the several issues like patriarchal system, domestic violence, dignity, and self-reliance of 21st century modern women. After analyzing all these, all the four movies, although they are limited, but in my view, they give indications that modern days directors are very sensitive, empathetic to the and reasonable as well as logical, more of a law-binding solution finder within the framework of democracy to raise the issue in cinema. At least Bollywood gives four films a day. The analysis of the four films of the last 5 years brings forth the fact that the film depicts prevalent social issues strongly through characters and story. Despite being mainstream commercial drama films, these movies delineate or portray the social issues by raising, not only raising, but debating through characters, situations, and suggesting measures to solve with logical and rational way. The approaches of the director are empathetic, progressive, anti-establishment, and feminist. The directors of this film follow the principle of positive feminist and postmodern story in telling the stories of social issues on the screen in the social context. In short, Indian Hindi film raised the differences of the existing society like corruption, discrimination, patriarchal system, domestic violence, and hygiene, along with depiction of the transformation in the approaches and attitude of the present generation towards giving pleasure, whether it be a couple or it be film of couple or toilet. Thank you.
Dr. Dheeraj, many thanks for going ahead and presenting your paper from the beginning to the end, in spite of the few hiccups that were technical. I really appreciate the systematic presentation given and your thought process in terms of your rationale versus the objective, plus the limitations, plus the fact that you have chosen very consciously an exploratory design and used Bechdel and content analysis. And you have said in the limitations that the Bechdel analysis is partial. It's a very mature presentation where you can look at yourself like a witness to your own research, and the treatment of the directors to the social films that you've chosen are also very deliberate. So I learned a lot from your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, everyone, to participate in this technical session too. Now, I request Professor Dr. Susmita Bala, Head DME Media School, to please address the gathering.
Thank you, Manmeet. Thank you, Dr. Anita Parihar. As topic of today's technical session is on cinema. So all participants worked so hard and presented their papers. Dr. Parihar, all your suggestions and opinion are valuable for every researcher. So thank you to you and all researchers, all presenters, and present here all attendees. So thank you all.
Thank you so much for having me here. And thank you, DME. Thank you, Dr. Amrish, Manmeet, and the entire DME team. I'm deeply obliged and humbled by this lovely experience. And salute to all the researchers and their work. And there is room to look further into your research areas if you want to sharpen it. It's very, very possible to develop it further as well. Thank you.
It's an honor to have you here, ma'am. Really, we are looking forward to listen more about the cinema perspective and video production from your side.
Yes.
That's like, it's a pet project. I speak from the heart. Thank you.
Requesting Hani Khurana to please proceed over the session now.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to extend my gratitude to Professor Dr. Amrish Saxena, Dean DME Media School, Convener ICAN4, and Professor Dr. Susmita Bala, Head DME Media School, Chief Associate Convener, for the ideation and planning of all the sessions. I would like to thank Ms. Manmeet Kaur, Dr. Manaswi Maheshwari, Ms. Shruti VS, Ms. Mudita Raj, and Mr. Muhammad Kamil for their constant support and guidance. I would like to thank Mr. Ritik Ghosh, Mr. Samantra Sarthi Das, Mr. Sachin Nair, and Mr. Yogesh Sharma for providing the overall digital operations for ICAN4. I would like to thank our entire team, all faculty members and students who have worked day and night facing all the challenges and obstacles of the pandemic to make this conference happen. I must thank all the participants who joined this session. Dear participants, we value your feedback. Don't forget to drop your valuable feedback on the link posted in the chat box. Follow our social media handles for more updates and information. Don't forget to visit the DME website and ICAN4 micro website for any or all details. Stay tuned with us. We'll be having 2 more sessions today at 3 p.m. Masterclass Artificial Intelligence in Journalism, and at 6:30 p.m. Unveiling of Books, the Practice of Public Relations Author. Thank you everyone for being a part of this session. See you all in upcoming sessions. Till then, I, Hani Khurana, take you a leave. Have a great day, you all.